The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planted with Sara Payan podcast. I'm Sara Payan, your host, and today we have legacy farmer and co-founder of Arcanna Flowers, Chiah Rodriques. Chiah, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here. I haven't seen you in a little bit, so I'm really excited to catch up.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, first question. What was your first cannabis experience?
Oh gosh. Okay. I remember very clearly I grew up in cannabis, so there was always, trimming, harvesting plants all around. And I used to fake pretend to smoke weed, which was actual like grass from the yard. I didn't really realize that and what they were actually smoking for a long time. But beyond that, I smoked actual cannabis when I was about 12. And my dad took me to rig on the river. And we were there, this is like, I don't know, 92 or something like that. And I was sitting in a big circle with all these adults and everybody's passing a joint around and somebody passed it to me. And I just I looked at my dad and he shrugged his shoulders and I was like, okay. So I did it. And yeah, it was great. It was just enjoying the music. That was kind of the whole experience. Like I didn't have like any wild, crazy experience on it, but I definitely had been hotboxed as a child a lot in the car and the house and all that my whole life. So it wasn't new to me to kind of be a little bit stoned.
Do you feel like that the normalization of it not being like taboo or like something that wasn't good was kind of really helped you with like your relationship, getting your head around the plant? Or is this something that you just never considered?
Yeah, I guess I never really it was just kind of part of life. I grew up on a back to the land hippie community, and everybody smoked pot and everybody grew pot. And so for me, it was just like a kind of a rite of passage in a way of like, okay, you're part of the adults now, like you can do the thing. And I've always pretty much since then, I didn't smoke on a regular basis, or utilize cannabis that much at that point regularly until I was a older teenager, like 15 probably. Then I really started getting into it.
Yeah.
It's just really ingrained as part of the community and the culture here, and everybody did it. And so I never felt that taboo really, unless my dad very expressly told me like, you can't tell anybody your dad grows weed and all that kind of stuff, because it was still, the Reagan era and all that when I was growing up, and it was like very risky.
Yeah.
But I felt like, yeah, no, it was just, and I was like, oh, cool, I'm part of the adult crowd now. It's all good. So, yeah, I never, I didn't really feel the stigma, I don't think, until I was older. And then kind of realized like, oh, okay, like this is kind of there's a lot around this. People have judgments and,
Yeah. Yeah. It's, for me, I think, well, I was 13 when I tried it the first time. And, I went out on the golf course with my friend with something we got from a senior in high school. And I was like, oh, what are we doing? Because I didn't realize it at the time that my parents, they didn't regularly do, but they did it from time to time when we were asleep. And well, actually my father wasn't allowed to because my mom said he was no fun, but
isn't that the opposite of what's supposed to happen?
I know, she's like, yeah, he's no fun. He just falls asleep. So I told him he can't do it anymore because he's just boring. But I didn't find that out.
What he needed. That's the medicine he needed, was to fall asleep, though, I feel like.
Probably. The man needed to chill out. That's for sure.
Don't we all?
No, right? That's it. But, when you look at like well, for those of you listening, Arcanna Flowers, they're beautiful. Like that, the first time I tried your flowers, you were doing a collaboration with Kikoko, and
okay, yeah,
I remember smoking that, and I was like, "Whoa, this is wonderful."
Was it the True Writer OG? I think we got them peanut butter breath as well, but that's not one that we created. We create our own genetics here on the farm, and so we have unique things that,
I
people
love
don't really
that.
see out there. And so the True Writer is actually my ultimate favorite, no matter what, pretty much.
I
It's my fallback.
I can't remember what it was, but the profile must have been so different from what I was normally smoking because it was a very different experience, and especially because back then I was working in a dispensary, so I was trying a lot of
Mm,
different things, and so to
uh-huh.
have something that was like, wow, I feel
Yeah.
that night, and I
Yeah.
like how I feel was like very. It's a very different thing because, like you said, like, you grow a lot of different cultivars, but a lot of people do similar cultivars, especially that we see in dispensaries. Not necessarily in the small craft farmers, but a lot of the things we commonly see in
Right.
dispensaries. There's a lot of riffing on
Right.
the same stuff.
Homogenized genetics, kind of. It's like all the cakes and the cookies and all those kind of things that, you know, it's
Yeah.
it's dessert heavy out there.
It is, which was like super delightful when I was first experiencing it, and then after a while, I was like, and on to something different.
Hmm.
Let's try something new and different because my body's very used to this, and this is not. And I feel for people that didn't work for their bodies because that was what we were seeing out there. Although I have to say, there was this one grower who did these amazing Girl Scout cookies back when it was like the hottest thing,
Mm,
and they were just these like very very dense hard nugs that when you crack them open, like that very like doughy cookie smell just came out, and I haven't
mm,
experienced anything quite like that since then.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you
Yeah.
get into cultivation? I mean, I know your family did it, but was it a natural move forward for you to do it?
Yeah, well, my father was cultivating and my whole life, and so it was just kind of part of the thing, but he didn't grow that much. I wouldn't have called it like a farm necessarily. We just had plants in our yard.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and my father's husband also, or my husband's father, sorry, um, also. And so, just part of the culture here, everybody just kind of had their plants. Um, and then when my husband and I got together and I was 18, and my dad had moved away because he was taking care of my grandparents, and I just kind of took over his farm that year. And then um, the next year, my husband and I, before we were married, we moved over there and kind of just like cultivated on that land for a season, I think, or two, maybe. Um, and then we found our own land down the road on the same community that I was born on and that we lived on. Um, and my husband is the second generation of our community as well. So it was just kind of like natural that we found our own spot and homesteaded and started from scratch. And we always grew like in the bushes. We called it guerrilla growing because you hike down the hill and you get like stickers in your socks and you hauled all your soil and your everything. You just kind of made it work out in the woods. And then once that was like probably like 98, 99, and 2000 kind of, we were still doing it guerrilla style. Even though the medical laws were um, in effect at that point, and Prop 215 here in California, um, we weren't quite comfortable coming out into the sunlight. We were kind of like just still in the, literally in the shade and the shadows. And then they passed um, a rule here in Mendocino County called the 9.31 ordinance. It's just, the number of the ordinance, but it turned into this program where you paid the sheriff's station to cultivate, and you paid them $100 a plant to grow, and they had map up your land and they'd come out and look at you once a year, and you could grow 99 plants. So at that point, we just decided like, this is what we were doing it. Let's do it bigger. Let's go full tilt. If we're going to do this thing, let's do it for real. Because at that point we had a kid, and we just knew that we didn't want our kids to deal with the same stress and trauma ultimately of being flown by helicopters. My husband's father had been raided in like 82 for, I think he had 4 plants or something crazy, and they
Wow.
it was a real dramatic, horrible thing. Like the sheriffs came up here, like, there was like murder. It was like, these were just a couple of plants, and they, turned his house upside down, tied him to a tree in the sun without a shirt on with like his buddies, and for a couple plants, like really put him through the ringer. And so that kind of trauma was like really real in our community. And we knew that like if we were going to do this and we have children, we should do it the most legal way that we could possibly do it. And so that's kind of what started us down this road with legalization. I'm like now kind of regretful, but that's a whole ball of wax in itself that we could get into.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the legalization thing it's interesting. I mean, I started in cannabis in the 215 days when part of training was also, teaching everyone behind the bar what to do if we got raided. And I remember just being like, wow, that's never done that in a job before,
Yeah, and that doesn't like your poor people are just like freaking out, right? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. But you have people who are really back then. I mean, and it still exists too. We still have a lot of passionate people in our work. But back then you had to be super passionate to be able to deal with that. Like you're like, oh, there's a chance something could happen. Fortunately, right. Where I worked, it didn't. But we saw it happening around us until, there were changes in Washington around the directives for the federal government and cannabis dispensaries in California. But it's, legalization was a really interesting thing. I mean, I can't believe that Colorado beat us first off.
Yeah.
That was kind of a slap in the face.
Bag over here.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, like, I really thought about long and hard whether I was going to vote for legalization. And the reason that I did was because every time it came to ballot, there were more people who weren't really involved and didn't care, that didn't have their heart in the right place, that were sticking their fingers in the policy and trying to change things to benefit them rather than the greater industry. And I wondered what we'd see next time.
I feel that.
Yeah. And we have a lot to change. We have a lot to change.
Still, I know it's not right. I mean, people ask all the time, how is it going? And it's like, I don't do it like California is what I usually say, because I mean, really the heart of it, the reason why we were doing it is ultimately because of the medicine. This is like, we believe in that here on our farm, our brand, it's like medicine for the people is really our ultimate, goal. And that means like bringing clean, good vibe medicine. It's not just like factory farmed, and there we have, it's a whole lifestyle, right, that we bring to the plant. And I think that like Prop 64 kind of forgot about the heart of what cannabis is, and cannabis is medicine, and it's for mind, body, and spirit. This is like, it's like your dad, if it helped him relax, that's medicine. Right. And so we have to remember that sometimes we put in this policy in place, but it's actually disserving a huge portion of the people in California. And we don't really, think about that too much. I learned some statistics a few years ago when I was, I'm in this movie Ladybuds, and we were doing a lot of talks and a lot of panels and promotion and all this. And I, kind of was trying to arm myself with some stats, because people ask these questions a lot, like, what really is the problem in California? Like, how is it going? Why is it not going right? And what I learned is that we're actually only serving like 35% of our municipalities in this state. 65% of the state doesn't have access to the medicine that is grown in California, because those municipalities decided to not allow them to get even delivery to that area, even if it was delivery from another county. And so people have to drive so far to have access to medicine. And so, yay, legalization. Well, no, it's a fallacy. At this point, it's like, okay, we are killing the small farmers, the legacy people who have been in this forever and ever, like decades and decades. So that's not working. And then people took giant investment and all these things because it's like the .com boom or whatever. Like everybody wanted in on cannabis, and not everybody should be in on cannabis. Not everybody knows what they're doing. Not everybody has the heart, to do it. Not everybody like has the same goal in mind. It's like, yeah, weed, but really it's about the medicine. And so when you really look at it, gosh, we really like screwed it up for the people who really need that medicine. And so I feel like we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
We could go down that rabbit hole and it's like a whole it's a whole thing, but ultimately, like we still have a lot of work to do to give people access to the medicine they deserve to have access to.
Yeah, I agree. We have a lot of things to change in California, but I've noticed this pattern when we get into legalization in states where people will, during the medicinal times, there's a lot of language around the patient and, symptom management and helping. And then the minute we get into legalization, a lot of people who touted that step away from it. And from a policy perspective, you have all your compliance issues that are around it then too, like whether you can even have that conversation with somebody and how is that safe access. And it's not about the people in the dispensaries acting like healthcare providers. It's about them having the opportunity to be navigators for people. Like when we were in Alaska the other month, when you and I were supposed to talk, and then I ended up in Alaska.
We rescheduled, yeah.
Yeah. I checked out a bunch of dispensaries and I met some amazing growers. But in the dispensaries, it was really interesting because they're not allowed to talk about medicinal benefits whatsoever. And in one of them, they were selling cigarettes too.
What?
It was really interesting. It was really interesting. And
well, that's crazy because people, just as a consumer, from the consumer perspective, if you're the first time going into a dispensary, say, and you're like, why am I in here? You're going in there because not just because you're curious about cannabis, you're like, I have this thing going on and maybe cannabis could help me. Or maybe you don't even know that. You just like, I'm having a sleep problem. And you go in and somebody says this cannabis, because it has these terpenes and these constituents to it, could help you. So they can't even say that. Is that right?
Not in Alaska.
Wow.
They can't have any conversations. Or at least here we just had to clean up the language. It's kind of like you can't say something will help you sleep, but you can say that it could assist in promoting a good night's sleep. You can't talk about pain, but you can talk about it may help with discomfort. You can't talk about anxiety, but you can talk about the fact that it may help if you're looking to alleviate stress. You may, and
you may notice.
You may notice you're less stressed, and it's a really interesting conundrum because I am the chair of the medicinal use subcommittee, and every time that I get on there are some awesome doctors that are doing great work and are really well-meaning, and then there are others that are like, why are you educating the bud tenders? They don't need that. The turnover is high. It's expensive for dispensaries, and they have no business having those conversations. And I'm like, whoa. Okay, first off, this is a very elitist conversation we're having because you're assuming that because someone works retail, they're stupid. And less than. Because that's what I'm getting out of this. But secondly, no, you don't. You don't want your bud tenders acting like doctors. But you can give people really good information to go back to their physicians and talk about. And you can ask questions about their experience to make recommendations of things to try because it's not going to hurt them. And you can create a container for safe experimentation so people can track their effects and figure out what works well for them. It's more about empowerment than behaving like health professionals. And I think that's what we need to perpetuate throughout the industry.
I love this whole thing that's coming out with like the ganjiers and the Buddhist, and like it's putting efficacy, like it's putting like, gosh, what am I trying to say? It's the science behind all this that it's like actualizing what we know from the testing and the science that is coming out every day. It's like something new we're learning about the plant, right? It's like the ocean. We only know like 4% of what's in there. And all of a sudden, it's all this new information. Yeah. but I love how it's like being applied in this way that it's really like it's real. This does work for these things. It does help with this stuff. And I feel like, that opens up this whole other realm for for patients, for people who are interested in cannabis, and that they could go to a consultant or, you know, somebody, a health coach that's doing cannabis health coaching or something like that outside of the retail sector. And they could go to this app and learn about the products, right? So I feel like there's so much of that coming online, and that's happening here in California, but it's not just in California. People can come from anywhere to get those trainings, and so I don't know, it's just like this whole thing is blossoming into something really amazing, and we're just barely tapping this yet. Like we just starting, and I think that will help with this normalization. It will help with like, I hate to say it, but I feel like a lot of times when somebody has somebody really sick with cancer or something in their family, and then all of a sudden it's this realization that like, oh, cannabis can really help. Like, oh my God, well, we've been missing this all this time, and unfortunately, those are kind of these pivotal moments that change people's minds and are really bringing people to the medicine. And so I just, I hope that there's a lot more of that kind of stuff happening, that we're just normalizing it through actual science and information, and people are having good results, right? And that's what we need. Got to get away from the stigma. And smoking is one thing, and I have a interpersonal battle with promoting smoking. That's really not healthy. It's not something that I want to be doing for my own body. And we are like making smoking look cool, and that makes me feel a little weird, especially with having kids. And I have teenagers. Oh, well, now they're almost adults. But, like it's a little bit of an inner battle of like, okay, I'm smoking on camera and I'm taking beautiful photographs with these like, flowers in my hair and all this stuff and like promoting smoking cannabis. But really like the topicals, the edibles, all the things, like just look at where you're getting that medicine from, making sure that it's from a good source in the first place. But like, yeah, there's just a can of worms. There's so much when we open that.
That's real. That's real. Well, and I think, there are ways to have the conversations about it, because, I mean, I know, for me, I've always enjoyed cannabis, but I didn't really truly understand the medicinal benefits till I had cancer in my 30s. And I used it, in lieu of my opiates and my anti-nausea drugs, which as a colon cancer patient, those drugs had really bad side effects that could have killed me.
Right.
So I got to do that. But, when I talked to people about using it for symptom management, because I work with a lot of doctors and patients around that, and they'll bring up smoking. And I always say, well, when you're looking at inhaling cannabis, if you need an immediate effect, it can be it's a very effective way of doing it. But if you're looking for, long windows of relief, and like say you're doing pain management, because a lot of people will be like, oh, pain management, should I be smoking cannabis? And I'm like, well, you probably want to be looking at something like a sublingual or an edible, because not only is it not hard on your lungs, but you also have a larger window of relief, and think about the modes of use and how it works with your body. And, some people don't metabolize edibles, and so then maybe inhaling is what they need to do. But from a harm reduction perspective, it's like giving people all of the opportunities to use it and letting them know,
right,
what I think that's having that critical thought part in there is what's really important.
Totally. And I come to it from more of a pain management thing for my own personal body. But I do help a lot of people who, they have COPD, or they're older. Like my father is 86 and he just stopped really smoking frequently. I mean, he smoked my entire life like a chimney, and, he always said like, the more you cough, the more you get off, kind of thing. And it was like, that was the example that I had. And so I just kind of went down that route myself. But, like for COPD, for instance, I know a few people that have that, and they're going more towards like vaporizing instead of combustion.
Yep.
Like they're getting just to where the the THC, all those things are like off gassing, and you're getting that flavor, but you're not really combusting it. And there's alternatives. There's all this technology now with like smoke that you literally like sip out of a cup. I mean,
Those
there's
are
so
cool.
many.
Yeah.
So cool. I want one of those.
Me too.
Christmas list.
Right.
But like cannabis has saved my life. It sounds like it's helped you a ton as well. And we all come at it from a little bit of a different angle. And for me, I had a back surgery, and I had lost the use of my right leg for months, and it's hobbling around doing farm work with one leg. But if it wasn't for cannabis, I wouldn't be here, and it has saved me over and over. And I'm learning how to utilize it in these other forms like suppositories. It's like amazing for just helping you sleep, and right at the site for me, lower back stuff and all that. Like there's so many other ways that we can utilize it. But if you walk into a dispensary at this moment, if you didn't do your research before you got there, most people are just going to guide you to something to smoke, whether it's
or gummies.
Yeah, right. And so it's not always, we have to arm ourselves with good information, and that's one thing that's lacking out there too. And so anyways, I feel like there's so many options now, and it's really awesome that we have so many alternatives, like the sublingual thing you were talking about. So
and what really excites me too are beverages, because that's really like the normalization on that. Like during the pandemic, when we were missing friends, and we have a big garden in our front yard, so we were having our friends come and hang out outside. And of course, a lot of them were either new to cannabis or hadn't revisited it in a while. And then there was also the thing of, do we want to smoke and blow things in the air like while we have stuff going on with this virus? Maybe not. So I would bring out drinks, and because of the type of drinks that we were using, it was like you were able to adjust the dosage for people. And we would sit out there and people would be like, wow, this is so nice. And, I feel like if I wanted to have a couple, I could. And I'm feeling this much sooner than like if you took an edible. And this is just delightful. It's like a nice little lift. And I was like, yeah, when they first came out, people would say, oh, nobody's going to use that. That's just silly. Like that's not, that doesn't go with the culture or anything like that. I'm like, well, the culture is changing because
yes, it is. Yeah,
we've got more people interested who have different interests, and
right.
like
we're creating the culture too, as this all evolves. Like I love that whole thing. It's like, in the beginning, the drinks I felt like tasted like paint thinner or something.
Oh,
a lot of
awful.
them were really right on, and nowadays, like, there's a lot more options, and they're great. I enjoy them sometimes. It's not my go-to, but
I use it for entertaining. But like when I was going through chemo, I remember getting like a cocoa mix. Oh, it was so gross. It was like just like the pools of oil on top, like a sludge on top of the cup, and you're like holding your nose and drinking it. You're like, I know this is for the best, but it was really like just like some like strange like bruja medicine. It just seemed like
well, they've come a long way with like soluble THC and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the nanoemulsions are really, really interesting. But going back from that and going into the flowers that you cultivate, we were talking about the fact that you do things a little bit differently. You create your own cultivars, and let's talk about that a little bit.
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sara Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sara has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsara.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
Of course. Well, we do. So my husband is a breeder. He likes to play with genetics and play with pollen and flowers. We started out where we're cultivating is in kind of dead center Mendocino County. Our community, like I mentioned, was sharing cannabis, sharing genetics, passing seeds around, passing plants around. And at the time that we started cultivating together, some of the things that were really hot at the time were like Afghani Kush. We had Romulan going around. Blue Dream was like just starting to be kind of a big deal. And so, you know, we got plants from people, and sometimes you get a plant from someone, they'd be like, I don't know what this is, but do you want some? I have some extra females, you know, and I'm like, okay, cool. So we had named something the Mystery OG, and the Mystery OG is in a lot of our genetics. So we don't really know what it is, but we have fun with this. You know, it's like we're always trying to look for the unicorn. It's something that I say a lot because it's like you never really know. And you cross something and it's like two parents having a million kids. You just never know. They're all going to turn out different. And so it's hard to just start a few seeds every spring. We have a hard time with that. We end up starting hundreds and then, you know, having a lot of work to do, but we have fun with it. And then we get pollen or plants from other people and been crossing, doing some unique things. We've been on the hunt for a 1-to-1 for a long time. So a CBD to THC, a good, you know, balance ratio. And here on the farm, we unfortunately got infected with hop latent virus a few years ago by getting some genetics off the farm from a nursery that we didn't know. This is before we really knew what it was. And so that has kind of guided how we change how we do things, and then also what genetic pool we're playing with. But we have some really fun things out there this year. Really excited about some things that are coming down the pipe. And we've been doing what's called pheno hunting. And so people don't know what that is. That's basically like you're hunting for the phenotypes that you like the best. And, you know, breeders tend to choose things that they love, the smell of, the taste of, the effects of, right?
Right.
And so you kind of see sometimes certain farmers will, a lot of their cannabis will be very similar to each other when they're breeding. They'll kind of do play on very similar genetics. And so we decided this year or last year to kind of branch out and bring in some more sativa type genetics and flavor profiles. And so we have some things this year that we're really loving. One thing we crossed with, which was Pineapple OG times Pineapple OG is the mom times AK-47.
Oh, I haven't seen that in ages. That's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we've come up with a name for this flower that we did harvest a little bit from last year, and we kept moms over winter. So that's part of the pheno hunting process, is like you kind of have to keep the genetics over winter and keep them in the veg state so that you have the ability to create clones and go from there the next season around. So you have stability in that genetic, and then you know, like, okay, we love that. Let's keep it going. And that's hard when you're off grid. We're 100% off grid farm. And so, you know, power is a issue for us. But we decided that we love this one cross of that, those parental genetics, and we're calling it the magical fruit. And I don't say this very often. It's kind of like the true writer, like that strain changed my life. And this magical fruit, I feel like my husband is going to roll his eyes when he listens to this, but I've been saying it a lot, is like, this weed changed my life. And I feel like it really like meets you where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
if you're like, feeling tired and it's kind of that point in the day, it will just kind of help you go there. But I would say it's a sativa dominant hybrid. But it just like in the middle of the day, it just is like helping me kind of just like, okay, this is something I've been avoiding forever. I'm going to do this right now. And I've done that with a bunch of different projects. So I love that kind of stuff because for me, I need weed to like motivate me or help me with my pain, relaxation. So I'm kind of like, it's like, I really want that energized motivation to do something. So we're playing with more and more genetics like that. And so our genetic pool this year has really expanded a lot, bringing in more sativa dominant stuff. And so, yeah, we're having fun with that. And the pheno hunting is it takes like a couple years from start to like finalizing a genetic that you're like, this is the one. And it has to hit all those points,
Yeah.
It's got to smell good. It's got to taste good. The effects need to be, on point. And then we are also looking at it from a cultivation side, which is how easy does it grow? Is it susceptible to pests? Does it attract a lot of pests? Sometimes you'll see one plant right next to another where this one's covered with some aphids and this one has not a one. And you just wonder they're attracted to certain terp profiles and stuff. And so those are things that help us determine which ones we want to further. And so if it trims really easy, it has a good bag appeal, all those things are things we take into consideration. So we've been playing with all kinds of genetics forever, and just this year enjoying it a lot. We are bringing in some Love and Laughter, which is Heart Rock Mountain Farms genetics. They won a couple awards at the Emerald Cup this year for unique cannabinoid profiles. I think that was the category.
That's cool. See, that's some of the stuff that
the sun-grown category.
Yeah, the unique cannabinoids. I'm fascinated by how because for the longest time people were kind of, without knowing it, breeding out a lot of the cannabinoids because we were just doing the race to the top with THC, which
right.
It does. I mean, THC is important, but it's not the end all be all, because when you have that full spectrum of cannabinoids and terpenes, that's when you really get some interesting feel.
Yeah, for sure. I know I always say it's not all about the THC because it isn't. And yeah, there was like a CBD boom kind of in the beginning of Prop 64,
Yeah.
Some brands and they wanted CBD stuff, so a lot of people grew a bunch of CBD for brand collabs or whatever, and then it didn't really I don't know what happened. It just sort of flopped at that time because it's hard for smaller farms to cultivate enough on a large scale, besides for flower in a jar. Like for extracts, you have to have so much of it to make large batches. And so there's a couple issues that kind of happen along the way, and then nobody wanted to grow CBD stuff anymore. And there's certain breeders that were doing it, holding on to genetics for very specific reasons and just keeping moms going. And now all of a sudden I feel like there's a resurgence again, and it's the popularity of unique cannabinoids is kind of coming back. You see people like Joseph from Emerald Spirit Botanicals, for instance. He's like an amazing advocate for that and other very unique things, which is like minimally processed flower, like the importance of not abusing the flower to so much before it gets in the jar. And then it provides a ritual for the people who crack that jar open and see this flower that's like not trimmed and it's protected by its leaves, or just like protecting, the beautiful flower inside. And you get to spend the time with it and like connect with the flower and have that ritual to like, clean it up and roll it up and all that. And so I feel like those are things that we sort of lost, I think, with this pre-roll market. You got to have pre-rolls as a brand. You kind of, people expect it, you want them, but I've never bought a pre-roll that I thought, now, damn, that's a good pre-roll.
Right.
It's just not, they're in a package too long. And so there's something to be said about honoring the flower and like having that ritual time with it and spending those moments like breaking bread with your people across the table and rolling it up and all of that. And so I like to do that kind of stuff and teaching people how to roll joints and kind of going backward
Yeah,
in that way.
I love that. I mean, back in the 215 days, pre-rolls were, I mean, now there are more full flower ones, but like you said, they get it, when you grind it up and everything, it starts to deteriorate. And back in the
Mhm.
215 days, I used to joke that because back then it was just kind of like everything that wasn't a nice bud went into it. So I used to call them the hot dogs of cannabis.
Yeah, it is really like the hot dogs and all the parts that get scooped up off the floor. I mean, it's really yeah, and you don't know if it's shake versus bud, and what's in there really. Yeah. It's a hard game out there for small farmers to have brands and know how to like really meet the market because these things are slow.
Mm-hmm.
The process is slow and kind of, sometimes you're breeding stuff and you get that flower in a jar and get it out to the people. And by that time, that trend has kind of moved on. So we are creating trends, but we're also like chasing trends as farmers and as
Yeah.
breeders.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, that's, I had, I can't tell you how many times people would come in and they would be, in their 40s or 50s, and they'd say, "Hey, I've always loved cannabis, but what's out there right now is just so high octane.
Mm,
I can't deal with that. Is there something that would be more like what I grew up smoking?" And I would always
mm,
make a recommendation of having like a ratio of CBD to THC. And you don't see it as much in the stores now because I always ask when I go places, like, what do you have for CBD ratios? And a lot of times they're like, well, we don't. I'm like, well, if we were actually educating the public on the fact that for those of you out there who are longing for that experience that you used to have, you might want to consider this.
mhm.
I think the sales would go up because I know like with my husband, he only smokes sloan grown now. I have converted him. But we also we were visiting with friends not too long ago, and a grower came to visit who did indoor grows and did high octane THC. And Jeff had a puff. He had two puffs of it, and his blood pressure dropped,
Mm.
and it was really unpleasant. Unfortunately, I had
Ah,
some CBD that helped him, but it's not about, oh, it's bad. It's like, oh, that did not work with your body. Like knowing the
right.
difference,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I always say that to people across the table. They're like, when I'm doing a demo or whatever, it's like,
Mhm.
you know, this does this to me, for
Mhm.
me, but it might not do that for you because
Right.
we're all different and everybody's body's different and you might respond to this, in a different way than I did. But I know that for me, this happened. That's unfortunate. I feel like I've heard a lot of numerous stories like that and I've seen it in action where people are giving like old ladies dabs at events and I'm like, why?
Don't
No,
do
don't
that.
recommend that. Don't give that. Like, it's too much and people pass out. I've seen that happen. Like, right, their blood
Yeah.
drops and yeah.
Instead of doing that, let's create that safe container for experimentation, and let's talk about, how to go about safely experimenting to figure out what works well for you. Because I know, like, I remember being at a party once and somebody gave an unusually large dab to somebody who I was just by the talking to them later, they didn't have a lot of experience and they hit the
Oh,
floor, and I was like, okay, this is the last thing that we really need have happening
no, no,
right
we don't
now.
need that. Yeah.
No, because then people, they paint with a broad brush and it's like, oh, it's all like that. It's like, no, no, it's not. And we just need to be really responsible about our conversations, whether it's talking about flowers and dosage or what
Yep.
cannabis can and can't do. Because as you and I have talked about, there's a lot of with our endocannabinoid system, there are a lot of wonderful things that cannabis can do to help support our bodies, but there are also claims that some of our colleagues have made in the past that are just very untrue. And it's like, let's not do that. Let's have real conversations with critical thought and really letting people know, yes, this is what I've experienced. Your mileage may vary, and this is how you figure it out.
Your mileage may vary, yeah.
You know? But, you
Yeah.
know, getting into moving away from that, getting into policy, I know we said we
Yeah.
wanted to talk about AB 1111.
Yeah, it's something that's on my mind recently because it's literally on the governor's desk right now here in California. AB 1111 is direct to consumer market bill.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess in order to explain it well, I could go backwards a little bit, which is kind of how it is now and why we would need that. And the reason is that, so at this moment, as a farmer like myself, I'm unable to get a self-distribution license because of my farm location. And no, I am not going to move my farm. This is my homestead. This is where it's at. Unfortunately, the zoning doesn't allow me to have that license. And in Mendocino County, until recently, they just opened it up with a cannabis business license, which is a little different, but it kind of includes a full review from building and planning again for all your structures. And it's just like, ugh, I've been through so much. We don't really want to deal with that. But in order to get our flower anywhere, a distributor has to take it there. If I'm going to send my flower to, say, an ice cream truck model style retailer that can do an event for me, say like at, Club Swami, for instance, we did this recently. It's like our distro moves that product from our brand into this retailer's license. They sell the cannabis over the table at said event to people. And then that product has to go back to the distro. We don't get to touch it, basically, as a farmer. And so that adds a lot of cost. It makes it kind of unrealistic to do events and have it be monetarily worthwhile. It's like, it's more about promotion and marketing at that point than it is about any sales. And so this market bill, AB 1111, could effectively help people who, I think it would help people better if they had their own self-distribution license, because then they wouldn't have to pay somebody to get it to that event, sit around and wait all day while the event is happening, and then turn around and take that product back to the distro. If I could just do it myself, it would save a lot of hassle, a lot of time, energy, money, etc. But people who do have a micro business license or a self-distribution license, or even a combination of, say, I found 5 other farmers that I wanted to combine with. We all know we're going to this event. One of them has their own distro that can serve us, because a self-distro is different than a regular distribution license. You can't touch other people's products if you have a self-distro, but you could touch all those farmers' product to get it to that event if you had a regular distribution license. And some farmers I know do have that. So you could pool together resources and say, maybe this would monetarily be better if we could do an event together, kind of as a collective in that moment. And so this could open it up to have that availability. So you could literally stand there at an event across the table, sell your product with your POS system. You can be your own retailer at that event and sell to that consumer right there. And then you have a one-on-one experience with that customer. It's so valuable to build, brand loyalty and that kind of thing, and just making friends in real time with the people who enjoy your products. And that is so valuable in the long run. So, this bill might not be 100% amazing for everyone. It limits the amount of events you can do a year, actually. I think it's 5. So it's not like an open book, like now we get to go to just like any event and sell cannabis across the table if it passes. It's more just like, this is another option in our toolbox that we could have that could help some people. And, for me, I'm all about community. I am always trying to maintain the culture and the community of where I live. And it's so sad when farmers drop off and can't do it anymore. They close their brand, close their farm, and it's happening all the time. And I feel like if we could help even one person, then that's worth it to me, because if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be here. And how boring would it be if all the weed in California was just from a few giant corporate farms? Like, we have to remember that we are all in this together. We could help each other. And so I really hope that people could go vote for that. By the time this episode, well, not vote for it, but I guess advocate that the governor passes this bill, right? And so that would include like writing a letter or signing a petition to have that done. And so by the time this episode comes out, it sounds like this will either have passed or not have passed. But the point is that it can kind of put the power back in small farmers' hands. And this is something that we really need because we just kind of keep getting pushed to the bottom, and having a hard time. A lot of small farmers didn't take investment. They don't have a giant farm. We're limited here to 10,000 square feet in Mendocino County. That's just been like secured this last week, actually finalized. The board of supervisors just said we're not expanding. We're not allowing people to expand. They haven't even got everybody their licenses and permits here in Mendo anyways. It's been a shit show, to say the least. And so if we can do anything to just like support small farmers, and I, on my social media lately, it's been a lot about this topic. And really the point is that if you feel strongly that, you want to help preserve the legacy and the culture of the Emerald Triangle and cannabis in California, when you go into a dispensary, you order online from your delivery service, ask them, what is the sun-grown that you have on this menu from a small farmer?
Yep.
What's your favorite sun-grown? And sometimes it's so surprising to me. I mean, I go in a lot of dispensaries as a salesperson trying to get accounts and that kind of thing. But I love talking to the bud tenders just to kind of get their perspective. Like, what's your favorite sun-grown flower? And sometimes I get the reply that, what's sun-grown?
Oh, man.
And it's so heartbreaking. It's like, really? I mean, wow. This plant should be grown outside, and you have like 75 different kinds of flower in here, and they're all from indoor. And that's really a disservice, not just to the consumer, but it's a huge disservice to the legacy that we're carrying forward here.
Absolutely. And one of the things, I was just up at Johnny Casale's farm, and we were talking about the fact that I love him. But, it's talking about the fact that back in the 215 days, a lot of what people were purchasing that they thought was indoor was actually just exquisite outdoor. And that, people have a very outdated view of what outdoor is because probably if they had bad outdoors from somebody who did not know how to grow. It was like if you got it from your pal who grew like if it was me growing in my backyard, it would not be like what you have. So don't use mine as an example of what primo outdoor weed is. That's just it. Know your farmer. And the experience of just finely crafted, thoughtfully grown outdoor cannabis, sun-grown cannabis is something that is, when you compare that side by side with a lot of indoor cultivations, you can see the difference. You can smell the difference. The experience is different. And going back to AB 1111, though it may not be perfect, I look at it as a way to continue the conversation and open it up to more direct to consumer opportunities for farmers, because they'll see that this went well and that it's not that big of a deal. Like, let's open it up more. Let's let the farmers have the same opportunities that people in the wine industry have with being able to have small vineyards.
Rooms or,
Like, would it be wonderful?
I mean, how amazing would it be if people could come to my farm and purchase legal cannabis right here while they're having a tour of my farm and walk away with some medicine? Like, how amazing would that be? I feel like we need all the opportunities that we can get as small brands, small farmers to have retail. But it's a challenge out there, and I feel like there's these like equity markets going on. We have the state fair online now, which is like, this year was the third year, and
it's
so
very cool.
All these little steps to kind of like showing that we can do it right. in an event at the state fair, for example, where there's like hundreds of thousands of people that come to this over 5 weeks or something like that in Sacramento, and there's kids, there's families. But over here is the cannabis zone, and guess what? It's working just fine.
Yeah.
It's great.
And
We're
it's
showing
inspired people. Like,
Yeah.
did you hear that? I just had Governor Jesse Ventura on the show. And just recently, he boycotted the Minnesota State Fair because he's like, they're not allowing consumption. And I know he was inspired by what we were doing here in California. He's like,
Hey.
if they're doing it in California, we should be doing it everywhere.
Right, right. And it was kind of, if you went to the state fair this year, you may have noticed if you had been to it previously, this was the first year we had consumption at the state fair. The first 2 years, it was kind of like still a little awkward, people
little
come
show
in
and tell.
and like, whoa, yeah. But now, we had a consumption there, but really it was still kind of unfortunate in some ways of how it had to be handled because of the regulation.
Mm-hmm.
They had to go on this long adventure to get over to the consumption area. And I think we kind of missed out on some educational opportunities with people because the information, the state fair, the amazing science and the walkway that you walk through to learn about the history of the plant and how we've come this far and what all these terms that we use mean and all that is part of the exhibit. And then to have to go figure out where to go to the next stage and walk like 10 minutes to go over to the consumption area, it's like one step better, but yet it's still like, oh man, now we're still kind of being like, you have to be over there because it's it's scary, or the children, oh no. But right, so we still have a long way to go, but it's like huge progress that is just incredible.
Yeah, it is huge progress. And the only thing I have to say about a long journey in between points is that there better be snacks if there's a long journey.
In the 110 degrees.
Exactly, something that doesn't melt. Well, I'm glad that I'm glad that we're having this conversation. I'm glad we have to, for those of you listening out there, you have to understand we're going through a really challenging time, and a lot of really talented people who have put their heart and soul into their work are at risk of losing their farms and all the beautiful things that they've built. And that has to be supported. If you are going to your dispensaries, ask about sun-grown flowers. And when you're looking at flowers, ask them, where was it grown? Who grew it? Ask all these questions. Look at the certificates of the testing certificates, the COAs. Like, take a look at.
Yeah, you can ask for that.
Yeah,
which is cool, right?
It
As a
is.
consumer, you can ask for that.
It's important. I know that there are states where you can't, which is really strange. And if you're in one of those states, talk to the people who depend on your votes to keep their jobs. That you want that as a consumer protection. It is your right to see.
Yeah, access to information. Yeah, that's important.
That access to information is important. And I know New York isn't allowing it. So for you New Yorkers out there, you've got a voice. Use it. We've gone into some really wonderful topics, some heavy topics. What are you hopeful about and excited about in the future?
Well, yeah, it's a mixed bag for me. I appreciate you wanting to bring that, the hope and the positivity back in, because it can be intense. And as a farmer and being in this for so long and being a farmer advocate and a flower advocate, cannabis advocate, like, there's a lot of big topics that come up, and we're still just, riding the big waves of the fallout or whatever of Prop 64 in California. But I think the hope is things like this market bill, this direct to consumer opportunities. I would really love to see one where we could ship our cannabis in this state to consumers direct to their door without having the distro involved, or some way to make it cheaper and more friendly for the farmers. Things like this really bring me hope, and like that's what I'm looking at as like my glimmer out there ahead, because we could use every opportunity that we can get. And I think things like these normalization conversations are really like inspiring to me, how we can help consumers like be empowered with the information, and the Buddhists, the Ganji, all these amazing groups of people that are just like, they're so freaking energetic and just like so inspired about the plant. And that's why we're all here. We have the love for the plant. And so everything that we can do to like encourage those kind of programs and those people like continuing that stuff is huge hope for me, as a farmer and just as a consumer myself too. Because if we end up not farming someday, I'd still love to have access to really, really good medicine and be able to have that information myself. But we are walking into harvest literally like right now.
Yep.
On our farm. So today is like September 17th. And normally we start harvesting things and their natural cycle right about now next week. And we have some light dips that just came in. So we're playing with the plant and working with the plant every day. And it's a reminder, like, this is why I'm here. This is what I love doing. We have people out here for tours tomorrow, and coming up, as we get through the harvest, and just to really be able to show people the plant and show people how it's done and show them that you can grow vegetables, herbs, flowers, food, like all the things together, and the health of the soil and the health of the garden and the health of the planet is like all something that we have in mind constantly, and that it can be done that way in like a really healthy, good way. And so I just love like having the tours and having that, that's like something I look forward to, just walking people around our farm. And so, yeah, it's just like, this is where all of our hard work has come to fruition. And here we are right at the, on the brink of harvest. So that's exciting to me.
I love that.
Try all the things that we've been growing all year.
Remove the jar, see the plant. Like there's nothing like it. I think when people are so used to seeing it as a packaged good, it's so impactful to see it in its natural state, because it's more than a CPG. It's not a CPG at all.
It's right. It's like putting the connection of like the apple came from the tree, and like here's the bud came from these plants, like the process, and also really gives people more respect, I think, for the farmers to see like, oh wow, it's not as easy as literally clipping and drying that bud and getting into the jar. Like the steps in between is the craft. That's where the craft comes in. The craft is really in the cure. And so
and one thing I've really enjoyed going to a lot of farms is seeing everybody's interpretations of their farms and growing, and how special that is. There's no two farms are alike, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful for people to be able to follow you on social media and see what you're doing. How do they do that?
Oh yeah, well, we have let's see, we have our Instagram, Arcanna with 2 N's _ Flowers. And then on Facebook, we're Arcanna Flowers and Mendocino Generations. It's one combined page there. Mendocino Generations is our a farm alliance that we had with like 65 farms in it for a bunch of years, which has kind of dissolved because people have fallen off the map. But that page is still there. And then we have a website, arcannaflowers.com. It's more just, it's about the farm, the flowers. You can see the products that are coming out soon and the current menu there. You can learn a little bit more about cannabis as a medicine in terms of more holistic ways of using it. I'll have like videos and blog on there also. And then you can reach out to me anytime you kind of like message any of our social media. That's me. My husband is more just on the farming side. He doesn't really get into all that stuff so much. So please do reach out. And if you want to just email me or DM us through those pages, please do. I'm always happy to entertain conversations, tell people how things are going, but also like if you're really, really interested in seeing an actual farm and coming to one, hit me up. You never know. Come out for a tour.
And if you're in California and you're going to your dispensaries, ask for Arcanna Flowers.
Yeah, ask for sun-grown flower, ask them, for small farmer sun-grown. That's really gonna, yeah, sends a message, right?
It sure does. It sure does. We have to flip the script and change the conversation because small craft farmers are why we are here today.
This is true. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you, my friend. And you are welcome back anytime. And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend, let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Pion on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher. Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.